Hi, welcome back to the farm. My name's Roz, also known as Passion Flower, and you'll find me here each week talking about my farming and creative life. We've had lots of really frosty mornings this past week. Beautiful, warm, sunny days, almost like 18 some days, which is kind of crazy. Which is a bit scary to think what might come this summer if we're getting winter's days that are this warm. But we have been getting frosts as well. But it is also feeling a little bit like spring. There are some daffodils out. My roses that I pruned quite hard this year have started to sprout some new growth, and my new rose that I planted in memory of Wade has started to grow as well, which I'm really pleased about. So there's sort of little springy things happening around, but then we're also getting these frosts that are then little like knocking back and killing some of those things that are starting to grow before it's actually really time for spring. I moved my sheep back into just their normal paddock because I've eaten down the grass in the shed paddock area again, and Vito was trying to climb the fence. I was only able to keep him out of trying to do that until there wasn't that much grass left, and then he started to try and climb it again. So I'm going to have to figure out what to do. I tried putting some extra binder twine across to make it a little bit higher, but he still wanted to give it a shot. So I'm not sure what I can do in that spot because it's actually quite low, the fence, and because it's a mesh, he's like using his front legs to try and reach the flowers on the other side. So I've popped them back into their normal paddock, and I have upped the amount of hay that I'm giving them because there isn't a lot of grass in that paddock. We have started to get sort of the sun water combination right. So there is a little bit of new growth, but not really enough to get it going long while they're continuing to eat it. So again, I'll keep this section out here by the shed free from them for a little while and get it to regrow, and then I can pop them back in there and just continue to rotate those. But I am going to have to do some serious fence work, I think, because as they get bigger and as they get hungrier, there's just going to be no keeping them in, or they're just going to ruin the fences completely trying to reach stuff on the other side. Been doing some more dyeing this week, 4 more of my flower colorways in large batches. I have done pansy, dandelion, hydrangea, and azalea. I had to look to see what it was. So they are now drying. So I'm starting to get a good supply of those, and I was able to rescan and label the ones that I did last week. So I am keeping up with that, which is good because I was really terrible for a while there of having piles and piles of unlabeled, unscanned yarn. And then in a panic last minute when I needed to get it ready for a market. So I'm gradually doing that and gradually adding it to the website as those colors are finished. So I am not having all of that real tedious work to do all at one time, which is good. Last weekend, I taught a brioche and a toe-up sock class at Unwind Craft Cafe, which was really great. Really good people in the classes, lots of fun, and by the end, I think that we were okay. We were getting socks done and we were getting brioche done. So that's always really pleasing to see how much progress can be made in a 3-hour class. And follow up from those classes, I'm now looking at some new dates. I will be doing a next steps in brioche, which will be a knitting brioche in the round, single colour and 2-colour. And I'm also thinking about some other class options, probably a continental class, learn to knit continental and how to then do some colour work and read a chart. I'm also thinking about a class all about casting on and binding off and the different ones that match with each other so that you, like for a scarf, for example, you'd have 2 ends that look pretty much the same, as well as some decorative bind offs and cast ons, things that you may not have thought about and how to get them stretchy, and you choose and use the best one for each project. And I'm also thinking about maybe a tips, tricks, fixing mistakes kind of class as well. You know, picking up drop stitches, fixing a knit into a pearl and a pearl into a knit, um, lifelines, and I'm sure there's lots of other little bits and pieces that I could pop into a class like that. So if there's something in particular that you've been meaning to learn or have heard about but don't know much about it, it'd be great if you could leave a comment below. I'd like to know what kind of things you are really glad that you do know, or things that you've heard about and you'd like to learn how to do, so that I can put together a class that is going to be really useful. I'm a little bit ashamed to say that I last week placed a Temu order. I've seen all the ads on social media and it got me. I started looking and I bought a few things for the business, and hopefully they will be useful. I bought a granny square blocking board. That's a piece of wood with pegs that you stick in so that you can get your granny squares to the same size. I am going to use it to block all of my bloom squares that I use for my samples that I've done over a whole number of years now, which one day I will probably turn into a blanket that I can have on my display somewhere. So I've tried blocking them before and it was really hard to get them all to the same size. So I thought that they might be a good way to put them onto this to block them properly. And also I thought it might be something that I could actually use to display some stuff on a market stall as well, but I don't really know how I'm going to use it in that capacity yet. I also bought a pot lid rack. I was finding that when I was using my pots and the lids were off, they weren't draining properly and they were getting like moisture on them, and I was worried that they were going to fall. So I got a pot lid rack, and that actually started my whole rabbit hole of looking at things on Temu, the rack for my pot lids. So that is actually really great. I've got that set up and my lids are drying on there right now. I also grabbed a very cheap round knitting machine. It's quite small. I think it's only got 22 pegs or something, and it's for a DK weight yarn. I thought it was just something to play with, just to sort of see. I've never used one before, and I thought that it might be a good way of quickly getting some samples of colours made up, rather than knitting the squares. So I have had 2 attempts at using it, and I've gotten much, much better. So this was my first go, and you can see it's actually really loose. The gauge is pretty bad. I wasn't sure how to tension it, and I managed to drop some stitches. And once I figured out how to actually thread it, because the instructions were not very clear, yeah, it turned out pretty well. I think what I would do for any project that I was making, and look, it's not very big. It's like you could probably make a mitten out of it, maybe. Um, I would put waste yarn in first, and then I would re-knit the ends rather than have the starting um, loops that you get from the machine itself. And this is my second attempt, and as you can see, it's a much nicer fabric, very nice and even. Um, so yeah, look, there's the difference. So I'm super pleased with the learning curve was pretty quick and I was able to get a nice fabric. So I think I will be doing some samples in some DK yarn. Perhaps I could knit some mittens, because this sort of would work well as like a cuff, and then all I would need to do is kind of add in a little bit extra at the top, some ribbing and like a gusset for the thumb maybe. Or even just have little bits like this that I could just use for samples of the colours. I think even though it's circular, I think I am able to just go back and forth and make like a strip. So again, I could potentially just make little squares as well. But yeah, not too bad. The other thing I bought was a little portable washing machine that has like a spin dry function. There are some super expensive yarn spinning spin dryers out on the market, and I'm sure that they're fabulous. But I normally just hang my stuff here in the shed and it can stay here for days and it doesn't really get in the way. So I have not really worried too much about that. Instead, what I normally do is just wring them out and then hang them on my rack in the sun. And when I'm over here, I'll open up the windows and the doors so that that gets a bit of breeze as well. But I thought I would give this little spin dryer a go and see how much of a difference it made in terms of getting the water out. So I tried it this morning and I think it's going to be okay. It'll do in a pinch when I want to get things dry a little bit quicker. It really only takes one skein at a time though, without it sort of flying everywhere. So maybe if I use like a laundry bag, I might be able to get a couple of skeins in there at the same time. And it only takes like a minute or two just to spin out like a lot of the excess water. And then it just isn't dripping quite as much on the floor. So I'm going to compare how quickly they dry. Half of the skeins that are drying now, I did use the spin dry for, and the other half I just wrung out like I normally do. And I'm going to see if there's much of a difference in terms of how long they take to dry. It might be useful, it might not, but as I said, it was a really cheap thing on Temu, and it was worth a go. Another very slow crafting week. I kind of had a few weeks ago where I was finishing things and starting things, and everything was really exciting and new, and but at the moment, I'm working on two things, the same two things I was working on last week, and that is all. Well, actually, not quite. So I did work on, I've got a pair of socks that sort of sit in my sock class bag, and so I worked on them a little bit during the sock class on the weekend, but only a few rows, just to keep my hands busy while everyone else was working on their projects. And I've also been working on little swatches and techniques, because I find the best way to actually get the wording right in terms of how to explain something is to do it, and then I can write it down so it's a step-by-step process rather than kind of just doing the steps without actually doing the thing. So yeah, I've been doing little swatches for different techniques so that I can write up the classes. So let's have a look at my sock progress. I have actually done quite a bit since last week. This is the second one of my opal party socks. I think I'm about halfway through the leg now. Where are we? Yeah. So I've got another whole pattern repeat pretty much to go, and then they will be done. So yeah, they're doing okay. And my comfy sweater from the 52 Weeks of Easy Knits book. Certainly not a week project by any means. And it's getting quite heavy, so it's quite hard to knit on for too long now. There's a sleeve split. That's the sleeve there. And so I've done this much here of the body here. So I have made quite a bit of progress, but it still has a long way to go. But it's going to be super warm and quite heavy to wear. So I'm probably going to finish it, and the weather's going to be too warm to wear it until next winter. But that's okay. I am enjoying it. I love how the colours are looking with the wildflowers, wispy mohair, and the teal not green colourway. I am getting into a rhythm with the 1 by 1 patterning, but yeah, it's just getting heavy and taking a long time. Well, that's it for another week. Thanks for spending some time with me. If you're enjoying these videos, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and look forward to seeing you next week on the farm. Bye.